Welcome to 340, the Intimacy Podcast. This is a space where we go beyond surface level advice and into what actually shapes how we love, connect, and break apart. Today's conversation is about something many people can feel, but struggle to explain. Why do relationships break down, even when there is love? Why do intelligent, self-aware people still end up in the same painful patterns? Why does presence disappear? Why does honesty suddenly feel dangerous? And what happens when connection stops feeling safe? Because something is shifting right now. Not just inside relationships, but between men and women as a whole. Trust is being challenged. Assumptions are growing. More and more what people learn about intimacy, masculinity, femininity, sex, and connection is shaped online before they even enter a real relationship. At the same time, beneath all the noise, people still seem to long for the same thing: to feel chosen, safe, desired, understood, and loved. Today's conversation is with Hanna Basel, a couples and sex therapist who works with relationships at their breaking point. Not the "we just need to communicate better" kind, but the kind where trust is gone, emotions are overwhelming, and the same fight keeps happening again and again. Her work isn't about giving couples better words. It's about understanding what happens underneath those words, when the nervous system goes into protection and connection starts to feel unsafe. So today, we explore what really drives conflict, disconnection, and repair, and what it actually takes to find your way back to each other. Hanna, I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. That was a beautiful intro, and I love everything that you just mentioned. I love talking about everything that you just mentioned.
No, I'm truly looking forward to our conversation today, and we've had a few conversations also before we start the recording now, and I feel like this is going to be a very special discussion, particularly around communication and the challenges people in general, I feel, have.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Thank you for creating the space.
no, I'm more than happy to. So I think I want to just dive into one of the first questions here, and we can go from there. And if you have a think about the work you do, and with most couples, they think their problem is communication, but what do you think actually is going on underneath?
So I think couples think the problem is communication because that's what we see, right? We see the tone, we see the words. What we don't see is the emotional threat underneath. And I think that oftentimes the communication is not the root of the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. And the problem itself is truly feeling emotionally threatened in some way, shape, or form. And that can be kind of feeling misunderstood, feeling inadequate, feeling alone or unappreciated. Those are all ways that we can experience a feeling of threat that we often don't name as a feeling of threat because we don't know how to.
It's actually quite relieving that you actually say that, because I've been going through couples therapy myself in my previous relationships, and I would say that one thing that was really coming out there was, hey, you need to work on the communication. So it was about the communication piece, and that was sort of the advice that was given, that we can communicate properly. And I think I've even said to myself that it's a communication piece that we need to work on. But
Yeah.
so beautiful in one way that you actually say that it's something even deeper that sits.
Yeah, yeah. I think too, part of what happens is that when we feel threatened, we begin to protect ourselves. And then the protection becomes a new injury. And so again, like we think communication, but it's often number one, the feeling of threat, and number two, the way we begin to protect ourselves unknowingly that creates more hurt in the process. And I think that this is something that baffles people because people can be really articulate and well spoken and have great grasp on words, and it doesn't get them out of these cycles.
Well, I think at the same time, if you think about very high performing people can have a great way with words, but maybe not the best connection to your emotions and how you actually feel.
Yes, yes. And I think that that's so confusing for people that have been able to maybe use these skills that they have in the workplace, including being great with words, and then it doesn't fix their relationships. In fact, it can make relationships harder the more you use words, or the more you try to explain yourself, or the more you try and convince your partner. And insight isn't the same as change. And I think oftentimes people are very self aware, like you said, very successful. They have insight, but that doesn't impact what happens in their brain and their body.
I can just look at my own life, and I mean, I was in a long-term relationship for a long, long time, and I was performing a lot back then, right? I was just actually focusing on my ego and delivering and providing for the family and traveling all the time and working all the time, prioritizing that over my family to some extent. Well,
Mm-hmm.
saying then that I actually did that to provide for the family was the rationale, but I think in one
Mm-hmm.
way it's also a protection mechanism that I was not maybe looking at myself in the right way.
Yeah, and I think what's hard about that is that most people that are in situations such as yours that you're describing don't know that they're doing that. Like they don't know
Oh,
that, oh, it's easier for me to be at work. It's less emotionally risky to be at work, or the way that I'm trying to provide and the way that I feel that I'm showing up for my family is landing as abandonment on my partner, right?
hmm.
There's really a sense of being completely unaware because the way you experience yourself is good, is giving, is
Yeah,
devoted.
exactly. No, but I think that's the scary thing is I think there's I mean, for me personally, I don't think I was completely aware of myself in that process. I was much more, not feeling enough. I actually felt always, I guess, to some extent that something was missing or that it felt empty. That no
Hmm.
matter what I bought or did or traveled, it still felt empty, if you will, right? The lack of, there was no fulfillment. I didn't feel whole in that process,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is kind of sad. When on the outside, it looks like you had everything, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
most other people.
Yeah, I think oftentimes we have those feelings and we don't know how to put words to that, right? I mean, we all have maybe variations of that feeling of something's off here,
Hmm.
right? Is this what life is like? And we don't know how to put words to it, or we don't want to engage with it, right? Like that's not something that a lot of us want to engage with. We want to keep going and hope it gets better.
Yeah, it's like I ended up with the question, is this it, basically, right?
Yeah.
And that's quite hard to sit with, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
in that sense. So in my work now, I talk a lot about presence, and that's something I've been working a lot on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also a lot of people simply they can't access it in relationships. What do you think blocks presence between two people?
Well, I think presence it sounds simple, but I think it actually asks a lot of us and a lot of our nervous system. So I think most people are operating in stress, on a certain level of stress in today's world.
Yeah.
And then the reason that we start to lose presence in a relationship, in my experience, is because it's hard to be present when we start to feel blamed. It's hard to feel present when we start to feel inadequate, when we start to feel like we have to defend, when we start to feel like we're not good enough in our partner's eyes. And so we start to lose presence either because of stress in our lives or because I think we start to experience threat in our relationship, whether it's perceived or real, is right. I don't know, but we start to experience perceived threat in our relationship.
It becomes a defense mechanism, more or
To
less,
not be present.
to not be present. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I can totally relate to that. I'm very much someone that can disengage like that. And I didn't even realize it until I was married for a few years, and my husband kept trying to get me to see it in his way. And finally, I did start to see it.
But then, I mean, then you become aware about yourself in a different way, though. And I think that's, for me, I think self-awareness is sort of the key to unlock basically whatever you want to do
Yeah,
with
yeah,
anything, from my point of view.
absolutely. And I think it also depends on your mindset. Like, one thing I love about relationships is that someone gets to know me and they get to help me grow. Like, I can feel myself stretch. I can feel
Yeah.
myself learn. And I love that feeling. Even if it's painful at first, I want to be in a relationship with someone that helps me grow.
I completely agree with you. And I think what scares me a bit about where society is today as a whole, I think a lot of people are afraid to be in a relationship today because they are afraid to get hurt. And they're saying that I'm stronger by myself. And your
Yes.
point, I don't think you can grow as much as you can do in a relation, in a long-term relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And relationships, for me at least, is sort of something that is there to create friction,
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
just this rose tinted view, the Hollywood version, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
also here to actually create that friction to make you grow,
Yes.
to make
I
you
love how you
accountable,
said that.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's often, we grow through friction. We don't grow through stasis. We don't grow through ease. We grow through friction.
Yeah,
And I think that for someone like myself, I have learned to embrace friction,
good.
even if it's uncomfortable. And sometimes I really don't want it. It's not good timing. When I zoom out, I have embraced friction and recognized that it's part of relationships. And by doing that, I actually experience way more ease when friction comes.
Yeah, and it's not as frightening.
Right. It's not as frightening. There's nothing wrong with us for experiencing friction. This is normal. My husband and I are very different people. And that's what I like about him. I don't want to be with the same person as me.
Yeah,
How
that's a
boring would
very.
that be?
But I also think that a relationship is not here to fix you, but I think you can actually, if you look at it the right way, it's here to make you grow, and you can actually look at it as a way of it. It will mirror you to some extent, and your partner will mirror you in many ways.
Yes. I mean, it's like walking around with someone holding up a mirror, right?
Yeah,
It forces you to be curious about why is my partner reacting that way? What are they responding to? What do they see and hear from me, right? And it really kind of has you start to again zoom out and take a look at how other people experience you.
yeah. And I think that would you say that would be sort of where you actually have work to do when you start figuring out what is actually being mirrored back to you?
Is that when you start to figure out, like, is that a point where people start to often find they like an entryway for work? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
yeah. I
asking?
mean, more like where you have work to do with yourself.
Oh, yes.
What you
Yeah.
see in the mirror, so speaking, right? I think that's a good indicator for where where you do have work to do on yourself, not your
Yes.
partner.
Yeah. I also think that if you are receiving feedback from your partner, right, can you be curious about that? Because there's usually a period of time before we see what our partner sees.
Yeah.
And during that period of time, our partner is trying to get us to understand their experience. And that can often feel very threatening. That can feel scary.
No, that I can definitely agree on. So when we are entering like a relationship, when it starts feeling unsafe,
Mhm.
what actually happens in the body though when we enter that stage?
Well, so what happens in the body is that first we feel a sense of threat that we don't usually name as a sense of threat. We usually name it as, okay, something feels off here, right? Or I'm feeling distant, or there's something going on with my partner that I don't know what it is, but there's something. And from there, our bodies start to mobilize and we start to scan for danger. And this is our nervous system doing its job, right?
Yeah.
Once we do that, we tend to move into our protection mode. And so that can look very different for different people, but it's a way that we cope with threat. And so for some people, they cope with threat by starting to pursue more, by
Yeah.
starting to protest. Hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Are you mad? I know something's going on, right? Other people will start to cope with that sense of threat by disengaging and saying, ugh, okay, well, there's something going on with them. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm going to go do my work,
Yeah.
right?
But this, I mean, if you talk about attachment theories, this is more like anxious and avoidant traits that you're,
Totally.
yeah,
Totally. Yeah, and I think they can be anxious avoidant. It can be fight or flight, freeze,
yeah,
fawn, right? Oftentimes, it is one of those, and anxious and avoidant just overlaps with those four kind of categories of ways that we cope with threat as human beings.
yeah. I agree on that, and I think also it also depends on the situation and the stress level and other things around you that actually you can actually move around in those quadrants. In my mind, right? You can be a very secure person, but in a certain situation, it might be that you're anxious or avoidant and move around in those.
1000%. I wish more people understood that because I think that it can feel very scary when you hear, oh, my attachment style is this fixed thing that's wrong about me. And
Yeah.
it's just a strategy that your body employs.
Yeah, and it might be in a certain situation as well. When you do these
Totally.
tests, it might be that in this point in time, I feel like this, and I've been in a relationship that makes me feel like this. But in a different, if you're with a different partner that makes you feel in a different way, you might be in a completely different
Yeah, I can
understanding.
totally relate to that. I used to be very anxiously attached. And then I went to the other end of the spectrum, obviously not by choice,
Yeah,
but because it's adaptive and life teaches us things. And so I learned, hey, anxious attachment isn't working. It actually is making me more alone. It's making things worse. It's making me feel more desperate. And so then my body said, okay, here's another way. Let's just shut down,
yeah,
right? And we adapt.
exactly. And then I've done a very similar journey where I've been very anxious before. I was having a very strong fear of abandonment. And whenever
Mhm.
that got kicked in, I was sort of people pleasing a lot and then running into it more from the point of view of, yeah, pursuing and chasing and trying to get validation. Do you still love me, right?
Yeah,
And when
pick
that
me,
doesn't
choose
happen,
me.
yeah, choose me, exactly that, right? And
Mhm.
if that, and then in a different scenario, it was actually slightly different. Then it was much more, I became almost avoidant to some extent, right? That I felt overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And then it became very different.
Mhm.
And at times I can be very secure. And then when
Mhm.
you're secure, you actually are providing that space for another person. But it's not a constant because it really, I can see that myself. It depends on the situation, the day. The one thing for me personally, when I become aware of myself, it's very hard to become unaware of myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think with that, it actually means that at least I can understand that, okay, now I am getting triggered by this and I'm starting, the impulse is to run away or the impulse is to start chasing. I can at least pause myself there and say, okay, this is actually happening inside me right now.
Yes. Yeah. I
And
mean,
just
that's where I
that.
want to help everyone get to.
So yeah, at least when I get to this point, it is actually much more relaxing because I don't think we will never stop getting triggered in one shape or form, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but it's actually quite revealing when you get to a point where I can see I'm getting triggered, and then I can choose how I want to react on it. If I use the rewiring I've been working on is really around stopping this the auto response, the autopilot, basically steering my decision and making a
Mm-hmm.
conscious decision instead, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that is the path for most people is being able to understand their own patterns, their own processes,
Yeah.
and by understanding it, we that's how we start to get agency, and that's how we start to be able to feel empowered enough to have choice instead of these habitual reactions. And they are habitual reactions.
Yeah.
Most people aren't thinking, I'm going to protect myself right now. Right? I'm going to defend myself right now. It's all of a sudden they find themselves doing it.
And I think also in today's world, where if you think about these defense mechanism was something we had when we lived on the savannah and we were having literal the fight and flight mode was really developed there, right? But I think now in today's world where we have technology is one of the key things coming into life and we're in much control with algorithms, particularly if you're in dating or stuff like that, it becomes a very overwhelming sort of scenario for people in one way, right? Where you actually make choices very, very quickly and the body makes the decision for you. You actually start building up your reaction to it and your rationale in the aftermath,
Hmm. Yes. Yeah.
which is kind of sad.
We assign causality.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So with that though, I mean, we talked about these high performing people, and I give you myself as an example. So why do intelligent, self aware people still end up in these type of destructive patterns though that we sort of covered here? But why do you think that
Yeah.
is?
Well, I think it's because the threat, like we can understand the idea of threat, but knowing how to respond to it is very different. And I think that oftentimes our partners aren't asking, are you successful? They're asking, can I reach you? But
Mm,
high performing people often treat relational pain as a performance because they don't know better.
yeah,
Um, and I also think that many people that are high performing have been rewarded for the exact traits that hurt them at home,
yeah,
right? That what looks like independence at work, right, can feel like abandonment at home. What looks like super focused at work can feel like neglect at home. What looks like leadership at work can feel like control at home.
yeah. I like this saying. A good friend of mine said this, and she said, "Our subconscious will always choose a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven."
Yes. Yeah. It's so true.
And it feels like we're defaulting into what feels familiar and that feels safe, even though it's harming us in one way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really befuddling for most of us, I think, until we start to be able to put words to, oh, okay, that is familiar,
Yeah,
right? Even the sense, the feelings that come up in those dynamics. For me, the feeling of longing was a feeling that felt comfortable for me.
yeah,
It felt safe. The feeling of closeness and attachment did not feel comfortable. It felt scary. And so I, right, was drawn to this feeling of longing. Like
yeah,
I know how to live in that space. I don't know how to live in a space of closeness. But I had to choose that for myself because I knew I wanted something different.
yeah. It's a scary place to be in, to be honest. if you ask me, when you're there.
It's terrifying. And everything in your body says, run. Everything in your body says, I do something different. You
I
have to
mean,
stay. I think you really have to work with yourself.
I think what I see particularly with men today is I think a lot of guys are going after a certain type of stereotype when it comes to masculinity that is not necessarily healthy, and at the same time running away when it gets too intimate and too real, and when you actually have to start feeling something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a sad place for us to be in today in
Mm-hmm.
society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's also so many voices out there telling us what to expect and what not to expect and what's normal and what you deserve. And I think the amount of voices out there, even though I'm part of it, I
Yeah.
think the amount of voices and noise is really confusing. And I think you said something in the beginning that people are learning more about relationships online these days than in reality. And that to me is actually very problematic.
I think we're more connected online today without actually building a real connection with someone. So we're
Right.
we're we're extremely connected, but we're not in connection.
Right. Right.
And I think that is very scary. That
Yes. And that's becoming kind of the new norm for connection. I mean, I can say that's true in my life. As a mom, I connect with most of my friends through random texts here and there. Right? Where I used to
yeah.
go for a walk with a friend for an hour, but I don't have time for that now. And they don't have time for that now. And so it's also, we're under pressure.
Well, when you say that though, I want to challenge you a little bit on that because you say you don't have time, but then at the same time, I think people in general are putting so much pressure on ourselves that,
Mm,
before we had somebody else, like a boss or something, who whipped us. I don't think we need that anymore because we're whipping ourselves.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that, actually. I think that we are whipping ourselves without recognizing that we're whipping ourselves.
And I think that's another scary element here, that we're
Mm,
putting so much pressure on ourselves because of what is expected of us rather than
mm.
actually what is good for us in one way.
And I think we have an innate desire to keep up, right?
Yeah.
Like we have an innate desire. We see what's happening around us. Oh, we better stay connected, right? We better keep up with everyone else. We don't want to be left behind, left out, inadequate.
Yeah,
And that drives a lot of the internal.
that's the FOMO and the fear of missing out, right? That you're going to end up with if you're not
Mhm.
doing it in one way,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of scary. But you've said something nice here, that you say that people don't need better sentences. They need to understand why telling the truth feels risky. What makes truth feel dangerous in a
Mm.
relationship?
So I think there's a few different things, but when I think about this, right, one of the biggest reasons that people are disconnected is because of resentment. And resentment comes from not being able to talk about things in the moment and for a long time. And so, in a way, resentment, it comes from not being able to tell the truth. And when I talk about the truth, I mean your own truth, how you feel, what you think, what you need, what you want. Telling the truth often threatens the story that is keeping a relationship stable.
Yeah.
So, the story, and not the actual reality, but the story, because the story that's keeping a relationship stable is often this is fine, it's no big deal, it doesn't matter, it won't be like this forever, right? We tell ourselves these stories so that we don't have to engage with these hard, scary conversations
Yeah.
because the truth has consequences, right? And oftentimes we know, or we think we know what those consequences will be. Oh, this is going to lead to a fight. my partner is going to pull away. My partner is not going to like this. I won't even be heard. What's the point? Right? And so, because the truth has consequences, we oftentimes avoid it and try and stay safe by sticking
Yeah.
to a story.
Yeah, and I think I've seen this in quite a few couples as well, where people stay in a relationship also for quotation marks safety, that they feel like they're gonna give up on their lifestyle or status or whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
not being in that relationship put that at risk, if you will. So
Yeah, I think that's part of the story.
yeah,
I
that's the
think that's,
story you're telling
yeah,
in
yeah,
your head.
totally. I think that's part of the story that's keeping the relationship feeling stable, right?
Mm.
Is that I need this, or that, right? Again, everything will be rocked, everything will fall apart, or I'll end up alone, right? These stories are what continue to keep us
Yeah,
quiet because we believe it's either going to destroy the relationship or destroy our sense of self.
that's it's it's so funny what the mind is doing to us in one way. So
Hmm. Hmm. It makes sense when you think about it through the attachment lens, which is,
yeah,
try how I try and come back to everything and how I make sense of everything is through the lens of attachment. And it does feel that way to our body, right? That, oh my gosh, if this rocks the boat, right? My partner's going to shut down or they're going to blow their lid, and that feels terrifying to most of
yeah,
us.
yeah, it does, and I think I've seen a lot of women are complaining with their men a lot of times that men are not talking a lot, and we often talk about the fact that we're from March and women are from Venus. And I think in the end of the day, we're all human beings that actually want to be chosen and beloved in the end of the day, right? A man wants that as much as a woman does. And we're
Yeah.
just taught through generations that we are in a certain
Hmm.
form. That for a guy, for example, it's considered weak to be vulnerable for a woman.
Right.
That's one example. That talking about feelings and sharing that is dangerous.
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
I've noticed is when that happens for me, it actually is almost the most erotic thing there is to some extent
Hmm. Hmm. I
with
mean,
a
I
woman.
think that that's true for, I feel the same way when my husband opens up and softens. I feel so close to him and I want to be so much more affectionate. And I see that happen a
Yeah,
lot
I mean,
with
man,
couples.
it create it for me. I think that creates intimacy in a way that is beyond. I mean, it's the
Hmm.
most vulnerable you can be with another person in that sense. And when you get to that point, I think you're in a place where you do feel safe. And when you do that, you can actually let go of performing. I think you can be
Hmm.
much more present in that sense, right? When you end up.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that it's complex because it's not that simple for everyone,
No, it's not.
right? For some people, a sense of safety can actually shut down desire.
True. You have the I see some people have this love desire paradox, right? When you love requires safety, requires calmness and
Hmm.
steadiness, and desire is requiring what is it, much more passion, much more curiosity and uncertainty to some degree, right? Which is actually completely polar opposites of each other.
Right. And that people with those polar opposite sexual systems often find themselves in relationships.
Yeah, and I think you get fooled a lot of times when you go into a relationship that you're caught up with the feeling of falling in love when you're at the beginning of the relationship, right? When you have a lot of attraction, even though you might be person that actually requires love and the other one might be requiring more of the affection, I mean the passion elements, right? And then after a while when you have completely different sex drives and responding differently, that creates a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not if you're not open enough to actually meet sort of in the middle somewhere and actually have a language to communicate, I guess, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so many people need help with that because talking about sex is so loaded. Politics, right? With gender, with so many different facets.
Have you met anyone who actually wants to have a bad sex life?
I have not had met anyone that wants a bad sex life, but I've met people that want no sex life.
Oh, that. But then again, yeah, that's a sad thing when you're in that place, I guess. So how do you work with somebody who is content with that though? What what do one do?
Well, it depends on the relationship they're in, right? If they're in a
Yeah,
relationship with someone that's content, no problem. But if they're in a relationship with someone that is not content, then we do have to start to, I mean, the first goal is just to be able to talk about it,
yeah,
right? And then to explore, well, have you ever wanted sex? What changed, right? Is it biological? Are they in menopause,
yeah,
right? Are they struggling with ED and that's why they don't want to put themselves in that position anymore? Right? I think the first steps for me are often to get curious,
yeah,
right? That's it. And then from there, we find out what's going on and is this workable? And like you said, people do have to be willing to meet in the middle,
yeah,
or at least come towards their partner, maybe not the middle. And that we can get creative about that.
yeah. That's a positive step forward, though.
I totally agree. And I think talking about it is always the first step because that's where we start to create safety just around the topic.
Yeah. I mean, I would say though, in most people, I would say if we're generalizing, I think most people do want to have a healthy sex life, right? I mean, I think that's sort of
Yeah,
from
I just think a healthy sex life is
or
a
it's a
very,
best, yeah, but
yes,
without all
exactly.
the
Because for
kinks and
some people, a
everything.
healthy sex life is sex once a month, and for some people, a healthy sex life is sex every day.
True, it's a spectrum. So
Yeah.
it's a very big spectrum.
But yes, I do agree that I think most people want to have what to them is a healthy sex life.
Yeah. So we go back to the negativity here a bit then, not to stay negative, but when someone gets angry, what do you feel usually sits underneath that when a partner gets angry?
I think sometimes anger is just a clean emotion. Like it is underneath anger is anger.
Yeah.
I think sometimes anger is saying there's something really important to me here, and I don't feel safe enough to show you how important it is. Right? I think anger is oftentimes a protective mechanism that protects us from being vulnerable about whatever it is underneath. Right? Anger creates agency. Anger makes us feel more empowered. Anger can kind of be motivating. It can be hope. And I think that oftentimes it's a safer way of communicating something that might feel
Mm.
really soft or vulnerable.
Yeah. It, but it's also very quick, almost this fight and flight mode again, right? So you're going into the fight mode in that sense. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's that protective mechanism, whatever strategy it is, it's one of those protective strategies. And so again, sometimes I think it can really be that it's clean anger is what I kind of call it.
I
But
like that clean
oftentimes it
anger.
is.
Clean
Hmm?
anger. I like that clean anger.
Yeah.
So uh, I think this one is, if you think about when you're in, and you work a lot with couples and all these as well, right? So what actually creates repair? And I'm not talking now conceptually, but in actual moments between two people.
So, I mean, that's complicated in a way only because I think there's a lot of ingredients to repair. It's not, a simple answer, but I think there's a few essential ingredients. One is that the person that's injured, they need to feel met.
Mm.
And so that usually requires slowing down, right? We can't speed through. Many times we want to speed through repair. We want to speed through this process because it's uncomfortable. And so I think one is we have to slow down and we have to meet our partner where they're at if we've hurt them. Then acknowledging what's happened without making it smaller, without minimizing it, right? Not, I didn't mean to do that, or, oh, sorry, right? But actually saying, you know what, I shut down in that moment, and I can see how that left you feeling really alone,
Mm.
right? It's just acknowledging it. Um,
Yeah, and that's beautiful. So on that though, I mean, I sometimes talk about the fact that it's not me and you against each other, it's me and you against a problem. But
mhm.
do you feel, is there a moment, do you feel, when two people actually shift them from being against each other to actually meeting again? And what happens there if that's the case?
Yes, there is a moment that I see. And it usually looks like someone starting to name the softer feelings under what they're doing, right? So I defend because I'm scared that you're going to see me as bad, right?
Yeah.
It's starting to name what's going on underneath so that the partner can start to see them as a human and not just see the behavior.
Yeah,
And from there, oftentimes, is where I get movement with couples.
it's beautiful when you start there. So on that, I mean, I noticed that from my marriage, and I did not really feel emotionally safe with my wife.
Hmm.
Uh, and looking back, I think that is one of the key things that actually inhibited me from actually speaking up and being more present, if you will, right? When I did
Hmm.
not feel safe enough to talk. But how, and we often talk about particularly women as well, but I think this goes also for men, right? How does emotional safety connect to like a sexual connection, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before. I think that for some people, emotional safety is essential.
Yeah,
Uh, and for sexual connection, it opens desire. That for some people, it actually makes sex possible, is
mm,
emotional safety. And that they don't want sex unless they feel deeply bonded. I
yeah,
think that other people, kind of what I was saying earlier, that emotional distance can actually create more desire.
yeah,
And so it's recognizing that people are different in that way. And can you talk about it, right? The point of putting words to all of this is so that we can talk about it and we can navigate these differences without labeling them as good or bad. But I also think that that's a gender issue that more men I meet and work with, they feel they are able to feel more emotionally connected through sex,
yeah,
through intimacy and affection, whereas women are not able to feel open to sex until they feel the emotional connection. And of course, it's not black and white gender wise, but this is just a theme that I see. And that can create a lot of tension in relationships.
I can definitely relate to that. And
Yeah.
both from myself, but also from men and women I've been talking to in general, it's sort of as a general theme. I think that is a recurring theme I see over and over again.
Yeah, and it's sad because when we don't understand one another, right, the person that really experiences connection through sex starts to feel rejected. And the person that doesn't feel that way, they start to feel kind of pressured or misunderstood. And we're not able to talk about it with a sense of compassion and gentleness that
Yeah,
these are differences, right? most couples have differences in very important ways. And how do we talk about that?
One thing I noticed in my long-term relationship though with my ex-wife was I was quite young when I met her, and we were both quite young, and in that it almost felt like our emotional sort of vocabulary or actually stopped in that. So we were sort of living and growing up together, if you will, but we weren't necessarily emotionally growing our vocabulary and opening up to each other, right? So we sort of were stuck in that in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's something a lot of couples are struggling with? But particularly if you're in a long term sort of meeting fairly young and then you're not learning how to actually
Yes.
communicate.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that happens to, I mean, I don't know how people learn to communicate, honestly, unless they take in more information. Most of us that are alive today have not been raised talking about what's going on inside of us with vocabulary, with curiosity, learning relationship skills,
And we don't do
right?
we don't learn it in school, right?
Right. And I mean, I think a lot
Or
of
at
us
home.
agree, man, there should be a class on relationships, right?
I actually I've been saying that in a few previous episodes that you need a driver license to go into a relationship.
Yes. Yeah. I totally agree. And it would just be for the betterment of all people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, but this is sort of the scary thing. I think and I'm opening up here in that sense that I feel like I know I went through this myself, and it's sad. Obviously, I wish all the best for my ex-wife, but it's like, if we would have learned how to communicate, it would have been a different situation, right? That you could have at least given each other a better opportunity to meet in a better way, right?
Yeah. Yes, because I think that for most people that are in relationships, they're wanting good for the
Yeah,
relationship.
of
They're
course.
wanting good for each other and for one another. But the way it comes out is often what creates a lot of misunderstanding. And it becomes
Yeah.
kind of coded in one another as blame and armor and, or disinterest, these different things that create kind of this animosity.
Yeah. That's a sad place to be in when you're there.
It is. I really want to help people put words to what's going on inside so that they can share it. Because I think what's going on inside of most people is actually beautiful. It's loving. It's lovely, right?
I agree with that. And we spoke about these high performing individuals, and you obviously work with quite a few high performing individuals who succeed like everywhere
Hmm.
except in their relationship.
Hmm.
Why do you think that gap is so common though? In many cases, and this is again generalizing again. So
I think that gap is so common because the skills that get you really far in your career aren't the same skills that get you really far in relationships.
yeah,
Right? What gets you far in relationships is slowing down, is listening, is being emotionally vulnerable. What sort of work, right, values those skills? What sort of work values slowing down, being emotionally available, being a good listener, right? I mean, it's it's makes sense to me that people come in and they're using all the tools that have gotten them so far, that have helped them figure out life and their career. But the same tools they're applying to their relationship are not working.
I think I mean, I've been working as a leader in corporate world for over 20 years, and what I've seen and learned from there now, and I start, and I've always done this at work actually, making, if you think about in leadership, simplifying this down, you can either be a walnut or a peach.
Hmm.
And if you're a walnut, you have a very hard shell and very mushy on the inside, not much substance, if you will. But if
Hmm.
you're a peach, you're much more softer on the outside, but you have a very strong core,
Hmm.
meaning that you can be much more resilient and be showing, holding, and giving direction. And I think the key thing there is when I've been working with people, I try to be much more gentle and getting people to feel safe, like psychological safety in the workplace, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
But from there, taking it into how do you become more firm and showing direction and leading in that sense, right? I think that's more of a healthy type of leadership style. And I've seen a lot of companies now today, particularly like in the tech world where I've been working, it's extremely performance oriented, it's extremely hard, KPI driven, and it's to your point, it's not about slowing down, it's actually going faster than before.
Yeah. Produce more.
Produce more, but I think there's a way where you can actually do both because people, when they feel safe at the workplace, particularly, I think you actually can deliver even more. You want to achieve more in that sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, I totally agree. I think that oftentimes the people in charge, right, that they don't even have the agency to let other people slow down, right? Like there's so
Yeah,
many layers on top of layers and expectations that it's like, where do we start? Where do we start to get? We have to give ourselves that permission.
yeah, I can see that. Um, so I want to just quickly shift into a bit more about men and women. I think we spoke about this before a little bit as well. It feels like the trust between men and women is changing right now, or it has been for a while. Is that
Mhm.
something you also see in your work?
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know if it's changing or if people are talking about it more loudly, more explicitly. Um, but I think that gender and oppression and, with the Me Too movement, with the politics in the world, I think that I see women that are naming these things more
Yeah,
and men not knowing how to respond to these things oftentimes or feeling like it's a personal attack versus their wives really trying to get them to understand what it's like to be a woman in the world.
yeah,
So I see that it's much more evident in the rooms that I'm in now.
yeah. I mean, I can see one example. I've seen examples of a partner saying, "Hey, I need space right now." It doesn't necessarily mean that that person is going to abandon me. It might be that, you know, okay, he or she just needs some space at this point in time, and then can come back and be more calm for that. I know for myself, if I would have gone into that anxious mode, I would be like, okay, I would be triggered like mad and start chasing and wondering why are you leaving me now? What's up? And then
Mhm.
understanding that, pausing there for a second, understand why that happens. It might be that that person actually needs some space right now, just to
Mhm.
having felt overwhelmed or something like that, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there was in the US, you had this sort of investigation about hidden online communities where men shared advice about drugging and assaulting women. You know, what does existence of spaces like that do to women's sense of safety and trust, do you feel? I'm not sure which news corporation it was, but it was one of the US one that I think it
I
was.
think it was CNN,
Was it
but I'm
CNN? Yeah,
not
it was
sure.
CNN, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was CNN, did the investigation. What does it do to our sense of trust and safety? I think it confirms for many of us that we are not safe,
Yeah.
that we don't know who we can trust, that we are very vulnerable, and that we are seen as less than by many men.
Yeah. But at the same time, though, I would say that a lot of men actually feels also emotionally lost or disconnected. What do you think many men actually are longing for then underneath all of this, right?
Do you mean men that are engaging in that type of activity or
No, well,
men
and men in general, not
in
necessarily.
general?
Yeah,
I think men in general want some of the same things that women want, which is to be seen, to be valued, to feel safe and secure,
Be chosen.
to, yeah, to be chosen, to know that they can count on someone.
Yeah.
I think underneath, most people have really simple and sweet longings. It's
Yeah.
what happens when those aren't met, and how those get communicated.
So what do you think happens to intimacy in general then when distrust starts growing almost like at a societal level, like we're talking about here?
It becomes very charged. I mean, I see it. I even feel careful having to talk about things, in a sense of who am I going to trigger? I think, you mentioned a post that I made about my husband and
Hmm.
I, and he was kind of being goofy, and I got really frustrated, and that then I got short, and I talked about this. And so many women were so angry at me because I decided, oh, hey, I just recognized I got short. I'm going to repair with my husband.
Mm.
And I got a lot of women saying, oh, here we go again. Another woman bending over to her husband, another woman capitulating, another woman, right? Um, and so for me, that was really shocking. And it was an example of the feelings that are in the air a lot around gender and relationships right now.
Yeah, I see this too, and I see it from both angles, both men and women. And when you start seeing what happens on both sides of this fence, it's saddening for me at least, because I think when you almost see the man hate on the one side, and then you see similarly a very harsh language on the other side, it becomes very hard to meet in between, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And
Yeah, and that's not how I want to be. That's not how I want. Like, I don't think you have to villainize men in order to create change. I actually don't think it will help to villainize men in order to create change. I think empathy and compassion help change people more than anything.
I so much agree. And I think just the example you just gave about yourself, I think it's just an example for how you actually go and meet your husband and how you actually create a space for him in that scenario as well, not giving in or collapsing into him, right?
Right, exactly. And yeah, I think that, as a therapist and a woman and a feminist, I am always thinking about right, how have I been trained?
Yeah.
What part of me is showing up because of choice, and what part of me is showing up because of training? And a lot of me is showing up because of choice now in my life,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about it and it's so important to me. And I choose to meet my husband. I also expect him to meet me, right?
Of course. It goes both
Yeah,
ways.
exactly. And for so many people, it was just interesting to see the reactivity that that post got.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you're going through that, but it is a symptom that I'm seeing, not just in the US. I can tell you it happens everywhere, right now,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in the Western world, right? In terms of how men and women are looking at each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's still. I just wish that in one way, you know, if you would look at the vast majority of men, like we said, they only want to be chosen and only want to be loved as well, right? And I think that's the uttermost that everybody wants. And I think the key thing for men, what men need to learn is to learn not to perform and learn how to stay present and calm down, slow down, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think also women, into a great degree, also need to rewire a bit about how they are performing for a man in the other direction to a
Mm-hmm.
great degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
We all have work to do,
yeah, we all do for sure.
right? I think part of what women really want men to see is what it's like to be a woman in the world. And
Yeah,
I think some men can really struggle to see how unsafe and how different it is to be a woman versus a man.
yeah. I saw actually there was a movie on Netflix that just got out with yeah, but it was really around. It was Sacha Baron Cohen, the Borat guy who played the lead.
I
Where
saw a preview of it.
yeah, I saw the movie the other day. I think it just got released just a week or so ago, and but it was interesting to see how he wakes up and then is in the world that all through history it was women who had been leading and men who were sort of at home.
Mm.
So like a wake up call for him to some degree.
Hmm.
But it to the point of, like you said, men needs to see how it is to be a woman and how it feels like.
Yeah, and vice versa, right? I think that I would hope, personally, I want to understand what it's like to be a man. My heart opens up more when I can understand people's experience,
Yeah,
and the vulnerability it is to be human.
that's the key thing. I mean, we are all here as human beings, right?
Right.
I mean, for me personally, I think that, yes, we are, it's just a small chromosome that makes us either a man or a woman. But if you look at what Carl Jung is saying, that we actually all have feminine and masculine energies within ourselves, if we use that term. And I think a lot of like work today is so masculine that people are in their masculine, including a lot of women are so much in their masculine, doing, performing,
Mhm.
not giving time to slow down and be creative and be lustful and enjoy, right? And then it's very hard to find that sort of balance between the two. And then taking two people trying to meet, it looks even more insurmountable in one way, right?
Hmm.
How to
Hmm.
get through that.
Absolutely. I don't usually call it masculine and feminine energy, but I recognize it for my husband and I talk about it as work mode versus
Yeah,
non-work mode. And it's the same thing.
it's the same thing. And
Yes, it's tunnel vision. I don't have time to slow down and be here
yeah,
with you. I've got things to do. Charge forward.
exactly. But I mean, it's sort of, you can also talk about yin and yang, whatever you want. I mean, there are so many,
Hmm.
every culture, every part actually has different ways of looking at it.
Hmm.
But it is the same thing. Like you said, it's work mode or non-work mode, right?
Hmm.
So what does it actually take for two people to feel safe enough to stop protecting and start revealing themselves again, if you will?
I think that it's one person in the couple, right? Ideally both, but it has to start with one person um, taking a risk and showing their vulnerability. Safety isn't going to show up without a risk,
Yeah.
right? Because we're feeling threatened, we feel disconnected, and then we want to change that. It's going to feel inherently risky. Um, and that's oftentimes how it starts. I also think it's becoming more self-aware. I
Mm.
think it's for both people to work on, do they understand the moment in themselves right before they react, right? You talked about that a little while
Yeah,
ago, and that's such a, if I could, right, give people like one place to start the work is, can you notice the moment right before you respond in a way that feeds the cycle? What's happening there? Can you be curious? Can
yeah.
you zoom out? Um, that gives you
Uh,
more power.
I can tell you that is something I'm using in my business life. I'm using that in my personal life. And when you do get self-aware like that, it changes everything in terms of how you
Mhm.
communicate, how you're showing up to colleagues, how you're showing up to your partner, your kids, your
Mhm.
friends, whatever. It's
Mhm.
such a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, for me too, right?
Yeah.
It's what works in my relationship is I still have many of the same experiences where I get triggered, but
Yeah.
it's the space between the trigger and my reaction that I've been able to widen, that I've been able to grow
Exactly.
tolerance for. And then I get to express myself differently, right? It's not that I don't get triggered. It's not that the hurt doesn't happen, but I get to express it in a way that is more of an invitation to my partner versus telling my partner they're a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me right now, the person who triggers me the most is my son. And a few years back, I was lashing out at him quite a lot. Like, why the F did you do this? Why can you, like, being angry?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would say 10 times, I can pause myself.
Mm-hmm.
I am not 100% because he's a teenager and he does trigger me sometimes a lot. But the other difference there is also when I am more self-aware now and I know that I can lash out at him or something, I can also go back and say, "Hey, dude, I'm sorry. It was
Mm-hmm.
because X, Y, Z," and I can take accountability for myself and my action and show
Mm-hmm.
up in a different way for him. And
Yes. Yeah.
as a result for me in a way, is that he's so much more opening up about himself, his emotions. He wants to come and talk in a different way, whereas before he
Mhm.
was sort of closing himself, right? And I think for me,
Totally.
that's in my journey that I've been on, I think it's the most rewarding thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that what you're naming right now is part of what creates so much safety is that ability to repair. Right? Most of us know that we can't expect and we don't want it expected of us to never fault, right? To never be sharp, to never be edgy, to never have a bad day. We know that that's part of it. I think the part that we really long for is can our partner acknowledge how they impact us? Can our partner repair with us when they make a mistake? Not can they never make a mistake?
We're human. A human will make mistake, whether you're a man or a woman, whatever, whoever you are. Nobody's 100% faultless.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, for me, it was, I mean, to the point of self-awareness and accountability for myself and my actions. I think it's the biggest thing I can give to myself, but also to people around me, whether it's my partner, my kids, even at work, colleagues. That is for me the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
As a
Mm-hmm.
leader is a very critical thing as well. I think to be able to say kind of. I mean, in a leadership role, you're never faultless either. You make mistakes, and if you
Mm-hmm.
don't own up to them, why not? I mean, that's another key thing, right? Doesn't matter what scenario it is. It's owning your mistakes in that sense and take accountability,
Mm-hmm.
even when it hurts a bit.
And yeah, and I think it often hurts. It often feels counterintuitive to take accountability. But man, it also usually feels a lot better afterwards.
It's relieving, I would say, right?
Right. Right.
Because otherwise, you're going to sit with that feeling of I should have done this, and you feel in the body. The body actually knows when
Mm-hmm.
it's not right.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, that's the body is quite spectacular in that sense. I would say.
Yes.
Um, so, if someone's listening now and they feel stuck in the same relationship pattern, what do you think is the first thing they should start becoming aware of? Because even self-awareness is not easy, but what do you think is the first thing they should become aware of?
I think the first thing to become aware of is kind of what we were just talking about, which is that moment before you react. And so for me, I talk about that as the moment you get
Yeah,
activated. We all get activated. And can
everybody
you
does.
notice that and then be curious about it, right? It's not just notice it and keep going, it's notice it and be curious about it, right? Can you also start to be aware of the story that comes with the activation?
Yeah,
Because what happens is something hits our body, right? A story comes online very quickly, nanoseconds, and it usually assigns causality of what it is that made us feel this way. And then we do something with that. Our body is
mm,
compelled to do something, right? Whether it's to say something or to say nothing.
yeah,
And so I think, can you start to be aware of that process inside of you with curiosity and compassion in order to start to know your inner world more and in order to help your partner or the people that you love know your inner world more.
Yeah. I think that's such a beautiful world, Hannah, because everybody has an inner world in one way, right? And we're protecting it with armor and walls, and letting somebody in there can be a very sweet experience as well when you do that.
Yeah, I think it's like life altering actually when you experience someone that is able to be with you, with all of you, with parts of you that
Yeah,
have been left alone. It changes your experience of yourself in the world.
it does indeed. And when you are there, I think you can actually start appreciating life all around you, even in the small moments, right? Like this
Mhm.
morning, I was actually having a cup of coffee. I was sitting outside in the backyard. Beautiful sunshine weather. The only thing I was listening to were birds all around, right? Just the sound of birds everywhere. And that moment is quite blissful in one way. You can actually start appreciating that. I mean, it was only for a few minutes, but even so, that was just before the day starts, and then still having that serenity is such a bliss in one way.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Knowing that there are some beauty left in the world, I guess, that we can all appreciate.
Oh yeah, there's so much beauty. I mean, I there's also darkness and, pain and chaos, but there's so much beauty. I live in Portland, Oregon, and so I can look out my window and see the trees.
Yeah,
And right, just for me, nature is a reminder of the beauty that's in the world.
it's amazing. Anna, thank you so much for coming. I truly enjoyed having you here.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.
If there's one thing to take from this conversation, it's that relationships don't break because we don't know what to say. And maybe that's the deeper truth underneath all of this. That most people aren't actually looking for conflict. They're looking for safety, for understanding, for somewhere they can finally stop protecting themselves. But when fear, stress, shame, or distrust take over, we stop revealing who we are and start defending ourselves instead. Perhaps that's why so many relationships are really struggling today. Not lack of love, but they struggle with lack of safety. They break up when it stops feeling safe to be seen. And maybe the work isn't to fix each other, but to understand what happens inside us. In the moments we pull away, the moment where a relationship changes, it isn't when the argument ends. It's when two people stop protecting and start revealing. That's where the real connection begins, again. So thank you, Hannah, for such an honest and important conversation. And thank you for listening to 340. Stay open, stay honest, and stay human.